All right, cool. We're going to get ready to fire this up live. Ladies and gentlemen, in case you're seeing us, we're going to be starting our pre-show momentarily right here live on YouTube Live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Happy Hour Podcast pre-game episode. Of course, I'm Ray. I'm being joined here by our very special guest, former NFL player, owner of Chesapeake Apothecary, Vincent Painter. Man, how you doing, brother? It's been a little bit since we saw you.
It's been a little minute, man. I'm great. Glad to be back on the show, brother. How you doing?
Good. And of course, dude, the last time we saw you was at Bubba's celebrity basketball game, and that was a blast. Like, I don't know if you've seen or heard any of the content that we had driving home, but Matt was a little buzzed in the back, and we ended up getting lost and was heading towards New Jersey and all the other bullshit. And the whole time I was just like, fuck it. Let me just turn on the phone and record all of this shit. And
that's smart.
Yeah. I mean, dude, it was just absolutely insane. And of course, you took part in the game. So how was that for you, with the game? Of course, when we had you on not too long ago last year, you said that you played basketball yourself, when you were in college and all that. What do you stay up on basketball normally, or is it something that just, it's something you haven't done in a while?
As far as physically playing, it had been a little while. I kind of like play every now and then. Definitely not as much as I used to when I was in high school or early college. But I mean, it felt good to get back out there, man. Get a good sweat going, and obviously basketball is some great cardio.
Yeah,
it was good being out there with the rest of the gang. T.O. and Fusion and Space Jam and all those guys, and Bubba obviously, and court. And but I was a little sore. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little sore after the game when I got home, and my knee was sore, my back was sore. I was like, oh man, I hadn't felt like this in a long time.
You basically got home and you're like, oh, what the fuck did I do? And man, we interviewed you not long after that, and dude, you look so blown the fuck up. It wasn't even funny. I looked and I'm like, man, poor Vince is hurting, but you probably just went to work the next day, picked up some stuff, and
100%.
How's business 100%. Actually? How's business doing?
Business has been going pretty well. We actually just acquired a second store in West Virginia.
So nice.
Coming soon in the works. Yeah, man. So that'll be coming soon in the works. We're getting ready to take off for this cannabis convention in Vegas next week. Go out there, network a little bit. But I mean, the business here is doing pretty good, man. We just steadily growing. We're hitting our numbers this year. Falling a little short, but we're still hitting our numbers pretty well. We like to overestimate so that we kind of hit actual, but so we're still kind of hitting what we thought we were going to hit for the year. Things are going well, man.
Yeah, that's good shit, dude. That's good shit. And of course, Bill Hartley is going to be our featured guest tonight. So this is a YouTube exclusive. Now that we're doing a YouTube joint, we can sit there and work in more guests. We always get requests from guests. Of course, we met Sergeant Pushup. He was at Bubba's game. He's trying to, get onto the show. So now that we have YouTube, I'm like, hell, let's just do the live YouTube exclusives. And it also helps me out because now I don't have to edit all this shit down and go, okay, now edit the bonus content. Okay, now edit the main stuff. I can just right onto YouTube as soon as we're done, and all I need to do is edit the audio portion of it. So, and are you familiar with Bill at all? Did you ever watch like Ghosts of Sheperdstown or anything like that?
No, I'm like curious with the ghost hunting shows and stuff, but I've never like actually see. I probably come across them once or twice, but I'm terrible with names.
Yeah, and it's actually funny because Bill he's from Maryland, so he had a ghost hunting company right here in Maryland, and he also, what's intriguing too is that he was a Civil War reenactor. So that should be cool. Like, he's one of those guys who went down to like Gettysburg and like dressed up in like
the full suit
and would reenact the Civil War. And it's like, wow, you got to sit there and wonder what the fuck the ghosts of those soldiers think. Like, like probably like, he has a little connection with the supernatural and all that shit.
Exactly.
It's probably like these ghosts are probably sitting there like, bro, look, you're doing it wrong. Like this.
I'm about to say he's come in contact with at least one spirit or two out there in those reenacted battlefields. At least one.
Yeah. And I mean, dude. Oh, and also, of course, and I don't know if you're a fan of it or whatever. Halloween Kills. Have you watched Halloween Kills yet?
I need to see that. I have not seen it. I want to see that. Have you seen it?
Yes, I actually I have Peacock. I have the premium subscription for Peacock.
I was so hurt they didn't put it on HBO, bro.
Yeah,
So hurt.
It's weird.
That's how we make it through the pandemic.
Yeah, it's weird how that works with the streaming stuff because they did it with Black Widow. HBO Max had a few things that came right out to it, like Suicide Squad.
Actually,
but I guess they're kind of like, I guess selling themselves out to, whatever, whoever pays the more money for it. But I was sitting there and I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, if I don't watch it, I'm going to sit there and think all day about watching it.
1,000%.
And I may see a spoiler. So what I did is when it dropped on Peacock last night at 12, I watched it at 12 o'clock. On Peacock, and it was great. Like I liked it, and and I think what it is a lot of people with that movie they forget, and they've already said that it's Halloween, the one that came out last time, and then there's Halloween Ends. So they forget that this is the middle part of a trilogy. So some of the things is just kind of like people are like confused with it. And it's like, well, remember, this is the middle part of a story arc.
This picks up right from the last one, right when they had them trapped in the fire in the house.
Yep. Yeah. And like, remember with the original two movies, Halloween and Halloween 2 in 78 and 81, those movies picked up simultaneously. Michael Myers got back up after being shot, falling off the railing, and went to stalk Laurie Strode at the hospital. So, it has that same thing. And I think the way that they're working it out is that you're going to be able to watch the 1978 one, the 2018 one, the one that came out now, and the one that comes out next year, all straight through. And the continuity just flows. And it's all just one, big thing. And that makes sense. You don't really get continuity like that a lot of movies. So
no, not these days.
Yeah, but and then it's funny because I came home from work and I watched it again because that's how much of a horror movie / slasher movie buff I am. Yeah. My wife wasn't home yet. I'm like, I'm gonna watch Halloween again.
You can enjoy it then.
Yeah, well,
my girl doesn't like that stuff either.
Yeah, I enjoyed it last night, but I was just half asleep. Like I went to work and I was just so balls tired, and I was like, worth it, completely worth it though. And of course, for those of you that might be watching us live right here on YouTube, or even if you're not live and you catch this later on, of course, our good friend Vincent Painter is wearing one of our Happy Hour podcast brick logo sweatshirts, hoodies. Make sure you pick one up from www.thehhpod.com. We always try to take care of our guests. Every guest that we have on the show, we always try to send something out as a thank you. And I got one of the hoodies before. I had one of the Halloween ones. And they're pretty goddamn comfortable hoodies.
I was just about to say, as soon as you finish talking, I didn't want to cut you off. I'm like, it's so comfortable too. It's so comfortable.
Yeah. And unfortunately, like I wanted to have hats done, but hats are a whole nother animal because hats, like, they're so intricate and hats are just expensive. I wore, you might have noticed that at the Bubba game, I had a Happy Hour podcast hat.
I did.
And I wore the hat. That hat was $75 fucking dollars because Lids has this thing where you can get they have custom hats now. So I sent them the logo and it's like, you have to pay for the hat. You have to pay $25 setup fee. You have to pay for the stitching and all that stuff on the hat. And then by the time you do taxes and shipping and all that bullshit, it was like almost $75. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to have a quality stitched hat any other way. So whatever. Fuck it.
I got a big ass head too. That's why I don't go back around with hats too swift, bro. Like fitted, I got to go in and get a size 8, bro. Once I found that out, I was like, okay, maybe hats just aren't for me. I'm gonna just leave this alone.
Yeah, well, it's funny because my wife, she always gets pissed because like I'm very weird. Like I have hats probably from my floor up to about here, like 4 stacks of hats divided up between 2 closets, whether it be whatever. Friday, whatever, just all
collection.
Yeah, I have hats that can match almost anything I wear. And like, why don't you get rid of some of these hats? And I'm just as bad with shirts, like shirts, hoodies, whatever. And she has a whole makeup room, so she has a closet in there. And then I have 2 closets in the bedroom. One closet is all my sports ones. The other closet is everything else. And I'm so OCD, I do not wear that shirt again until I've worn all the other shirts in there. So I have shirts that are like probably 5 years old and they look brand new because I don't dry them, but I maybe wear them like once, twice, maybe 3 times in like a long period. So, but yeah, I mean, she always bitches at me, but I'm like, hey, you know what? I at least wear this shit. Like I wear it. Like I make sure I wear it, you know, and it doesn't
just buy it and it has a tag on it still 3 years later.
Yeah.
That's the worst. That's the worst, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, dog, you like a sneakerhead, but with everything else.
And Vince, of course, you went to Virginia Tech.
Yes,
Do
sir.
you have any, like, actually yourself, or when Bill comes on, have you had any kind of like paranormal type experiences or anything like that? Like anything you can remember either from Virginia Tech or just generally in your personal life or anything like that?
Not that I could say that I remember. I know I heard like my dad would talk about stuff that happened in my grandma's house. But I can't really say, really anything that happened to me because I mean, even if it did, I probably was kind of like, all right, whatever's going on here, I'm just let it happen. I don't want no parts. I'm just, mind my business over here. I'm gonna just keep watching this movie and just, act like that's not happening. But no, man, I can't really put my finger on anything that's paranormal that's ever happened to me. I can't say. I've heard stories from family members about some of the houses we were staying in, but I can't really say that I noticed it.
Yeah, I've had a handful, and the handful that I've had, of course, I'm going to tell Bill, hey, this is what's up, but hopefully Bill knows some of these places that I bring up, because like it's insane some of the experiences that you have, at these places, and it's just like
give me one. Where did you go?
What's up?
Where did you go? You said at these places, but what does it sound like a specific trip you were going?
Well, we used to sneak into like some of like the insane asylums and shit like that. Yeah, so we would sneak into some of those places, have odd experiences, or just places where like myself or some of my friends lived, and it would be just weird from top to bottom. Like, and I'll get into some of them and some of the urban legends, and of course, one place I lived at, I played baseball, and up at the top of the baseball fields were supposedly a quote unquote witch's grave. So, that's another thing. And that's right down in Annapolis. So, it's all stuff that, I definitely want to bring up with Bill and see, if he knows any of those, or if he's been to any of them, and what kind of experiences he's had, and, just all that kind of fun stuff, in general. So, I know you're a little bit, actually, where you are, La Plata, like, what county is that?
Charles, I believe.
Charles? Okay, yeah, because there's a couple of them that are in PG County, so PG/Montgomery County. I'm not sure if it's like right across that line or whatever, but that's where some of the ones that I was familiar with were, like, where some of the like weirder shit were. And then of course, Maryland, you have the legend of the Goat Man, if you ever heard of the Goat Man. So that's one of our urban legends.
What?
Yeah,
that's definitely devil related. Goat Man. That's a devil related story. I can already tell.
Yeah, well, Goat Man is kind of like the legend of the Jersey Devil. So that's the whole thing with that. So you have the Jersey Devil, and then you have Goat Man, and you have all the other nonsense that just goes on. But I mean, I've always been one of those types of guys. I've always like believed there. We're not the only thing. Like something, we go somewhere. I don't know where we go. I don't know if we just linger around, the earth for the rest of our days or whatever until we figure it out. But we go somewhere. There's something inside of us that makes us think, and I don't know. It's just an interesting field and interesting stuff, to go through. And I think it's going to be pretty smooth talking to Bill once he pops in. Hey, this is the blah blah blah. With all the paranormal stuff. So, now, is there anywhere you've ever been to where you just kind of looked around and you're like, this place is definitely fucking haunted, or you went somewhere and you just felt a little off, like you just kind of went there and like the hair kind of stood up on your neck and you're like, there's something not right here.
Something's off here. Well, I've definitely been in a couple. I've been in an abandoned house that made me feel like that one time.
Yeah.
A whole farm. Hey, I got old farm made me feel like that. I went to this bonfire one time, and like we went hanging out in the little barn or whatever. And I was looking around. It looked like all old and shit. And you kind of like look at the wall, and I'm like, I bet this is where the Jeepers Creepers guy was hanging from, right here on the wall.
Yeah.
Like this is the spot.
Yeah.
We're all about to get eaten tonight.
Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers is
You know what I'm saying?
somewhere in this goddamn barn.
Right.
And
I'm not gonna lie, Jason is the reason why I have not been camping yet.
Really?
Well, what? Yeah, all that shit happens in the woods, bro. What you mean? Yes.
Do you know that that location for the Friday the 13th movies, that's actually New Jersey, right?
Really?
Yeah, Crystal Lake. It's based off of the area in New Jersey, because in New Jersey there's Voorhees, New Jersey, which was a surrounding area where they filmed Friday the 13th, and that's how they got the last name Voorhees, was due to Voorhees, New Jersey. So you can actually go to that camp and do like an overnight experience at the actual camp where they filmed for Camp Crystal Lake and all that shit. And I think sometimes what they do is they have someone dress up like Jason, and he's in the middle of the night or whatever.
Exactly why I would never go. The time that I go will be the time that they hired the wrong guy who's actually going to kill somebody. Well, you're supposed to be acting, bro. Wait, why were you really sitting in the throat? You're not supposed to be doing this. I'm going home.
You're just sleeping, and they're like, okay, it's tent sleeping only, so you're in your tent, and the next thing you know, the tent just cuts open and the thing just rips open.
You're like, hey, bro, you making it a little too realistic. Like,
yeah.
You acting a little too strong right now.
And then they grab you by your leg and start pulling you through the woods, and you're like, wait a minute, I don't think this is an act anymore.
We're no longer joking here.
Yeah.
We're no longer joking. Yeah. I'm just see that right there will make me think about that doggone that thing that happened in Colorado when the guy dressed up as Joker and went to the movie theater. I would only imagine something like that happen. Yeah, I would imagine something like that happen with somebody dressed up as Jason. Nope, I'm good.
Yeah. And
I definitely I would go camping one time. I've never been. I would do it one time just for the experience.
Yeah, see me like with camping, I'm not a really big go camp in the woods with like a tent type guy, because there's bears and shit. Fuck that. I want no bears. Like 100%. I'd rather do like a cabin. Like a cabin would be cool. It's like at least with a cabin, if a bear gets in, you at least have like kind of a fighting chance. Like, bears outside your tent, that thing's coming right through that goddamn tent. You're like, no, I don't want any of this. We were in North Carolina recently, Asheville, North Carolina. We went up for our anniversary, and that's all the mountains. Like, we loved it up there. We're like, oh man, I saw like the mountains and all that. And we did a little bit of hiking. And when we went hiking, like I sat there and like the whole town, even like they would sell like shirts, hats, all that stuff. Bigfoot, I believe, and there was a point where we were standing on one of the overlooks or looking, and like you just heard this loud echo of like just a dog barking. And I told my wife, I was like, that's an odd fucking spot for a dog to be. Like, I want to imagine like a random stray dog being down there. And I remember watching a program where people said that Bigfoots can duplicate sounds of other animals, or like, if you've ever heard of the Wendigo can duplicate sounds of like other animals. So you can go try to see what it is, and then you become the prey because they're smart enough to do that. My wife,
you walked into something you wasn't expecting.
Yeah. And my wife's just kind of like, oh, well, I think it might, I'm sure it was a dog. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it was too. But I was just kind of like, man, like all the Bigfoot shit that they had there. Like, and I looked up, I was like, Bigfoot encounters and the county that I think it was called Macomb County or something like that. And literally like 15 minutes away from where we were staying, somebody had a Bigfoot encounter where they like recorded video of something like a Bigfoot walking across the street or whatever and all that. And that's the thing. It's like, that's why I like having guys like Bill on, because it's like, there's shit out there that's above us.
Never imagined.
That we'll never know about. 90% of the oceans have not been explored. A lot of the forests and shit have never been explored or anything like that. And it's just kind of like, man, what the fuck's that? I don't swim in the ocean. I'm weird. Like, I don't.
I'm not going close to the abyss. No, not where the sunlight stops reaching. I'm good. I will never go past that. Not even if it's in the safest submarine that can take all that pressure. No, because you don't know what's down there. Nobody knows what's really down there. No human can go down there and swim and survive that water pressure.
Yeah, and it's funny because you look at it And with it, it's like I don't like going in the water in general because I'm like, there's things out in the water that can kill me, like a barracuda, a stingray, a shark, depending on where you are, maybe an alligator. If I'm in a pool, I'm good. There's not much that's going to kill me in the pool unless I'm like so drunk I end up just drowning in the pool because I'm in Mexico.
Unless you're in Florida.
Yeah.
A gator sneaking the pool.
Oh yeah, dude. Like that's the thing. Like I have friends all the time try to sell me, hey, why don't you move to Florida? Hey, why don't you move to Florida? I'm like, I don't want to deal with alligators. Like, screw that. Like, we're lucky here in Maryland. And actually, you probably heard about this on the radio, is that recently they did find an alligator here in Maryland. It was like in a pond in PG County somewhere. And some guy and his son caught it and basically made alligator meat out of it. But it was like this urban legend because dogs kept on disappearing and pets and all that kept on disappearing. And people were like, I wonder if it's an alligator. And people were like, well, alligators, they can't survive. They can't thrive here because of the weather changes and shit. And apparently, sure enough, it was a fucking alligator. Like they were fishing and it swam up on them. And then they came back more equipped. Apparently, like they've caught gators before in like other places and they caught the alligator and, ate it. And also, we have the Did you hear about the zebras?
I heard that there was a zebra loose like PG County or something.
Yeah, there were three of them. Actually, two now. One died because
that was real.
Yeah, they talk about it almost every day on night. So basically, the zebras got out from someplace, but we're not equipped enough. Like we don't have people that have the experience of catching zebras. It's like, how do you catch a zebra?
Oh no, maybe catch it the way you catch a horse. That's about the closest thing I can think of. But normally horses are pretty domesticated. I see them on the farm, unless you going out to fucking Wisconsin or something, grabbing them out the wilderness.
Apparently, what someone did is they took one of those. Like you ever see the cartoons? It's like the rope where like Wile E. Coyote will step in it and like he'll get like taken up by his leg. Apparently, put out one of those trip lines. And it either got the zebra by its neck or it got it by its leg and it died. So, and they said apparently those are illegal in Maryland. Like you can't have that shit. So now it's the whole thing of now the zebras are loose. And it's like, zebras aren't like natural habitat here. No. And they actually escaped from somebody's farm. They were like at some farm where like people could pet them and shit. So they got out. So now it's the fact if someone killed the zebra, using this trip line because it was private property. I guess they didn't want the zebras on their property or whatever. Or it was just for predators in general, like maybe like a coyote or, wolf or something like that, because it was killing their chickens. But, dude, I don't know. It's insane. Like, it's like just when you think something's not supposed, oh yeah, we don't have alligators out here. Sure enough, you're in the middle of a pond and it just comes swarming up on you. You're just kind of like, yeah, dude, I don't know about this. Like,
probably kicked in the face by a zebra.
Yeah. Imagine that. Like you look out your window and the zebra from the bubble gum container is just standing out there looking at you. Like, and that's what happened. Like, that's how it got first reported. There was a young girl who looked outside and she went downstairs. She's like, Mom, there's zebras outside. And her mom's like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, get the fuck out of here. And she's like, no, Mom, really. So she like grabbed her by her arm and she took her to show her. She's like, look, there's 3 fucking zebras over there. And sure enough, she's like, oh my God. And then they called and they're like, yeah, there's zebras. And like the people from 911 were like, what are you talking about? There's zebras. Like, they're like, there's fucking zebras, like over like on the woods lines. Like, what do you want us to tell you? Like, so, but,
no, Mom, there's zebras here.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe that story when somebody first told me about it. Thought it was just some made up, just what tabloid BS, Maryland tabloid BS. But sure enough, there were zebras.
Yeah,
I thought they escaped from the zoo or something. But what the closest zoo was? What, DC?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they came from a zoo. They said that they came from a farm somewhere. So somebody had them, at a farm somewhere. They came from somewhere. That's the thing. Like they don't just manifest. Like I want to imagine, like I'm not gonna sit here and then like you just see like proof, like when Thanos snaps, you just see dust and then a zebra just appears or a zebra comes out of a Stargate somewhere or some shit. Like a zebra just walks up wearing a Michael Myers mask and just stabs me 100 times. Like, it's like I don't know. Like, I'm surprised nobody's gotten drunk and tried to ride one of those zebras. Like, yeah, that's
what
they
probably did. They just did it at nighttime, so the rest of us hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah, they need a horse wrangler. That's what they need. They need to get like a Texas horse wrangler and have him wrangle the zebras. And when he wrangles them, he just hops on their back and he rides the zebras to wherever they need to go. Like, just imagine that. Like, you hop on like a wild zebra's back and you're just kind of trotting off like into, the
time. Real. I'm gonna come back for another two later. I'm gonna ride this one all down right.
Yeah, you're just riding it. You're sitting there, you're chewing, like blowing the zebra bubbles from the zebra bubble gum or whatever, like as you're just trotting off the zebra.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
and I would expect that to happen in South Florida, not here.
What all do you have coming up? Like, is there anything you have coming up, like event wise, or actually what's going on with the whole football stuff, man? Last time we talked to you, we know you said, CFL could maybe still be a possibility, or are you just mainly focusing on like your business here?
Focusing on the business, man. Things are going so good here. I'm like, looking to expand and grow and making a lot of connections with people that, I never would have thought I would make with. And like I said, we doing a fall harvest event this week. That's been going pretty well. Having a couple of vendors come up there. We had a pet adoption agency come up. One of our other vendors have them more. That's in the flower concentration stuff. They had to pop up. Body bar lady there. CBD.
Oh, you there, buddy?
Yeah, we got some food trucks and everything coming this week. Thursday to Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, nice.
And then I'm leaving Tuesday to go to the Vegas Cannabis Convention. A group of us from the shop will be going there Tuesday. Yeah, we're gonna leave on Tuesday. We're staying Tuesday to Friday. Network with some people, learn a lot about the industry and whatnot. Learn about some other.
Now, is that a pretty wild time going up there?
It's gonna be crazy, man. There's a lot of big names in the industry. Is gonna be up there. A lot of big names in business in general that are going to be there speaking and giving advice and tips on how to make a business grow and all this, that, and the third. So it's going to be a good week, man. It's Vegas, so you get to test out some of the dispensaries out there, make some visits, chit chat, and test out some of the West Coast medicine that they have available. See how we compare. So that's going to be great. That's going to be great, man. Like I said, we got the second store open in West Virginia here. We got to be up and operating in the next 4 to 6 months, probably. There's been a lot going on, huh?
Now you have the West Virginia store. So how far, like reach wise, do you want to go? Do you want to try to take it nationwide, or because I know with CBD and cannabis stuff, like that's all that right now, everybody's saying that the best thing to do is start investing money into that, because that's become like that shit is just becoming huge. Like, it's blowing up. Like, I don't think nobody would have thought 10 years ago that with that we'd be, from here 10 years ago to where we are now 10 years later with that industry. It's absolutely insane where that industry has gone.
I mean, so Virginia really let me know. Virginia, to me, because I know how Virginia is being a Commonwealth, was the light bulb going off for me, because they went medical, I believe, 2 years ago. And then they had the medical program really just getting on its feet, and all of a sudden they came out of nowhere. We're going recreational. So, I mean, that in itself, with the Commonwealth of Virginia being so quick to pull the trigger on it, let me know that a lot of the higher ups in government finally starting to see the benefits to, the industry and what it could bring to each and every state financially. So, I got high hopes for the future of the industry, but high hopes for the future of the cannabis business, man. It's booming. It's a young industry. It's steadily growing. It's not slowing down anytime soon, man. That's why I kind of like, people keep asking me why I go back to ball, and I'm like, a part of me wants to go back to ball, but looking at all the stuff that's going on now, it's kind of like, man, I don't even know if I really.
What's the sense? Like, what's the sense of there and getting, an injury that may, fuck you up the rest of your life? And, it's like, but you're doing good right now. But, I wasn't sure. So actually, Bill's coming through the room right now. So I'm going to admit him, and then we'll rock and roll with our interview with Bill. So because it's going on 8 o'clock time. And pretty much what this is going to do is this is going to conclude pretty much our pre-show. So Bill's still trying to get hooked up a little bit. So for everybody watching, make sure you just bear with us for a few minutes. Bill's going to go ahead and get connected, and then we will roll right into our episode that will be on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever else you find your podcast. And of course, right here on YouTube and YouTube Live. So, of course, Bill Hartley. Bill Hartley is known for Ghosts of Sheperdstown. He's also a local ghost hunter and a Civil War reenactor, which we were talking about a little bit before, we started the regular program. Is that, that's pretty cool within itself. Like, I'm very intrigued by that. Like, I can sit there and talk about ghosts and the paranormal and all that shit all day long. But the Civil War stuff, like, I don't think I've ever met anybody that was a Civil War reenactor. Like, it's the kind of thing that, it's almost like, so what, it's like, would you be willing to take like an actual bullet from a musket gun? Like, just you get that into it. It's just kind of like, all right, man, come on. Just,
you start looking at it like, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah. This isn't that bad. It's a little steel ball you see. And it's actually funny because Maryland actually, I'm trying to remember, but I think Maryland kind of has a history of making the muskets on, here in Maryland. There's like the little tower that's downtown where I think they used to make the muskets and all that. So.
Choose one of those. I just want to feel like, how strong was it?
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's crazy though, because you look at it, it's like, someone gets shot in the leg or something like that. And like that shit would explode your leg. Like your leg would literally just explode out, with all that shit. Like, imagine that. Like, that's just, oh man, like I can't
to get it to load and reload, but that thing hits, it's doing big damage. This is doing big damage.
Yeah. And I mean, like, look at it like this, like back in the Civil War and shit like that, like there was just amputations. Like they would just cut shit off. They'd just be like, oh, you got shot in the leg. All right, whatever. We can't dig it out. See you later. Just hack your leg, just clean off. And now you can take like a flesh wound and they can either dig it out or, do whatever it is that they need to do. So,
war times.
Yeah. Like I can't even imagine what some of that stuff was like going through all that. And of course I love hey, there's Bill right there. What's up, man? How you doing?
What's going on, guys? What's going on? I could hear everything, but I couldn't get the damn video to work. I don't know. That's why they hired me as the tech guru for the show, obviously.
And what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and conclude our pre-show stuff right here on YouTube Live, and we're going to roll right into the regular program, which is going to be our audio form as well. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Happy Hour podcast. Of course, I'm Ray. I'm being joined by my special guest co-host, former NFL player Vince Painter, and our featured guest, ghost hunter Bill Hartley. Bill, how you doing, man? Like I've been looking forward to this. I love the paranormal myself, so it's going to be awesome talking to you.
Hey, I'm great. I heard some of what you were saying. I'm no longer in Maryland. I'm in New York. But
okay. And but of course, now your ghost hunting company that you had was here in Maryland, though, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And now, what intrigued me, and we were talking about this a little bit beforehand, is you're also a Civil War reenactor.
I'm a little too old for that now. But yeah.
Now, how was that? Like, how did you get involved with that? And also, how did you decide? Like, did you go down and you basically got a sign like, hey, did you actually do like the actual reenactments themselves, or?
Yeah, I was in the movie Gods and Generals too as a background actor. That was like the first year I started doing it. So you can find my big fluffy ass way back in the top of the hill and some of this stuff. But but outside of that, that's kind of for me, my grandmother who lived in Virginia used to pick me up and when I was a kid and take me to the battlefields, and she instilled this history in me. And then it was like, after her passing, I kind of went through one of those, want to kind of reconnect. So I started going back to the same places, and I re-fell in love with it. And I started reenacting, and I did it for a number of years. At first, I just joined the company who happened to be looking for other people. And then I eventually just started my own. It was fun. It's hard as hell. I mean, I was surprised and now I'm at about a 300-pound size, but then I was about 500 pounds. Yeah. And so I used to love the questions. Are you wearing an actual uniform? And I'm like, this would be enough uniform for a company,
And how hot were those uniforms? Are those uniforms exactly like what they would wear, like while they were
all wool. all wool. You go a couple layers of clothes underneath it, your shirt and all that stuff, and then you throw on the wool jacket and the wool pants, and you don't know life until you've had blisters the size of your fist on the bottom of your feet, and what I like to call the affectionate chub rub down in the nether regions from all the sweat and the wool. But I will tell you, it was an oddity that we used to call the reenactor refrigerator, because once you have sweated so much that everything underneath your jacket is completely drenched, that when you're actually able to stop and catch a breeze, it feels like an air conditioner turned on underneath your coat. You're like, ooh.
And Vince, could you imagine like what it would be like if NFL uniforms were made out of wool? Like imagine running around trying to play a game in a wool uniform.
It sounds like somebody's passing out from heat exhaustion every goddamn game. That's exactly what it sounds like.
Doing that once too. That was an odd feeling. We were up in Gettysburg at it used to be Boyd's Bears when they had their big facility up there, and they did they did 3 weekends because that year the rain had been so bad that they actually washed out the actual Gettysburg reenactment.
Oh, really?
We had guys, they were coming over from the 140th anniversary from like the UK, and they were like, "Well, we'll set up somewhere so you guys can still have a reenactment." And we're up there, and this is like maybe my second or third year doing reenacting, and I thought, well, my fat ass is tired. I'm going to take a shot here and fall over, and I'm going to be good to go, dying here on the field. Well, I died, and I laid there face up, and I thought, well, I'll just throw my hat over my head, which is also a wool kepi. So I was kind of like completely, covered in wool. And when it was over, I just sat up, and I was like, guy comes by and says, "Dude, you okay? You don't look right." I'm like, "Oh, I'm fine, man. I must have rested really good. I'm not even sweating anymore." And I'm like, "Okay, let's get you looked at." And I had a heat stroke from it.
Man, like now what was probably the crazy, and with firing the guns, now you guys actually fire the guns during that. How do you do that without actually firing live ammo? Is there a certain way of doing it? Powder in the
we
gun?
don't put projectiles down the barrel. Obviously, we dump a lot of black powder down there, and there's kind of a rule of thumb is that the further you are, the more level you can be with the gun. But when you start getting closer, you kind of fire above the head.
Okay.
But people have gotten injured. The Wax Museum that's in Gettysburg used to, and I say used to, hold living histories in front of it until some kid who first year doing it decided, well, wouldn't it be cool to shoot my foot with this gun?
Oh,
He had
no.
100 grains of black powder in there, and he blew his foot off.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Holy
So
shit.
they put the kibosh on having anything do that anymore. So,
oh man, we were talking about before we went on, like, back in those days, like Civil War and all that shit, like if you got like a musket shot, like they were like, if it was too far in, they're like, we're not digging that shit out. Like off goes your leg, off goes your arm. Like, it was the kind of thing where they were throwing limbs out of windows.
Yeah, it was a medical thing though, because you figure the rifling of today, full metal jackets, it's meant to pierce and go all the way through. These were projectiles of soft lead. When they fired, they became mushy. And when they hit anything that hit a bone, it shattered. There was no chance of saving that limb. And if they didn't cut it off, you were going to get gangrene and die a few days later anyway. But if you want to see something messed up, I mean, you still being in Maryland, go to Frederick and look at the Frederick. They have a Civil War medical museum in there, and there's a whole room dedicated to pictures who have soldiers who had done all kinds of horrific injuries. Their photos are there. People with like missing jaw bones, and
it's
horrific. It's one of those things that I consider myself. I have a pretty solid stomach for most things. And that guy, I walked in there and had to walk back. I was like, "Oh, is this too much?"
Jesus. And I was telling Vince, I looked it up right here, actually in Baltimore. We have the Phoenix Shot Tower, which the Phoenix Shot Tower, pretty much what they would do is they would pour molten metal into there, and it would run down the shot tower, and it would ball up and make the little musket
ball.
At the bottom.
Yeah, that was before Civil War, though. I think that was War of 1812.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's right. It's been a few years since I've been in Baltimore. I kind of lost a little bit of my history. I'm stuck up here in God knows redneck land of New York. So I miss Baltimore so much. You have no idea.
And that's the thing. Once you're from Maryland, especially Baltimore area, like you never really leave Maryland. Like everybody always says here that once somebody's an Oriole, they're always an Oriole. It doesn't matter if they spend a half a season here, we will always see them as an Oriole. And that's kind of the way it is in Maryland. Like you make Maryland, but Maryland doesn't leave you. So that's, it's crazy how a lot of that works. And of course, you're ghost hunting. How did that come to be? Of course, reading up on a lot of your stuff, you had a couple of paranormal experiences yourself. What made you actually start your company with doing all that?
Believe it or not, it came from Civil War reenacting.
Okay.
We went, my company and the company that I used to actually roll with, did a living history out in West Virginia in this little house in the middle of nowhere. And, I'm a city guy. Being out there at night and seeing nothing but stars and no lights, it's a little buggy at times, So we're there at this house, and these people are really nice people that ran this house. And they were like, look, we got a couple ground rules because of the ghosts in the house. And I was like, what? Okay. And so they were like, also, you can't go in the parlor without, being polite because, we had a couple of girls who died on this property in the 1880s, and their bodies were left in stasis in this room for about a month until they could bury them because they died in winter. There was another incident where you can't go in the basement at all. And if you go to the second floor of the house, you have to go with someone who lives in the house because another death in the house happened in the 1940s where a woman got the letter from the War Department that her husband had perished overseas during combat. Apparently took a gun to her forehead, and apparently she died a very angry spirit. So apparently there's stories of people who go up there by themselves who they could feel someone trying to shove them down the steps and everything else. And, my point, I'd had my experiences, but that was kind of where it left off. Wasn't interested in the paranormal except for maybe watching something on TV or seeing a good horror movie or something. But then being there, I was like, oh, I think your stories are what their stories. Great. Okay. So they told us, and this is where I was first introduced to the term ghost hunters. They had a group of people who were coming out. They had a camera crew coming with them. We had to sign waivers so we can be on, they can film us. And they came out and they asked us to go into the back field of this place. Again, pitch black. Can't see shit. They want us to go in the middle of this field and fire off our muskets to, quote unquote, stir up the ghosts. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to break my ankle on a corn husk or something, but okay, let's try this. Went out there, we fired the guns for a little bit, came back. They left after a while. They were all showing their pictures of, oh, look at these ghosts. I got these ghosts. And I see these little balls of light floating around. I'm like, okay. So me and a couple of my friends decided afterwards, well, let's just go in the house and just take a couple pictures for shits and giggles and see what happens. And we're there. And my friend picks up his camera, brand new digital camera, probably a whole whopping 4 megapixel at that point in time, and goes, spirits, can I take your picture? And as he lifts up his camera goes straight forward, smashes into the fireplace. It launched from his hand. And
I'm guessing that's probably a no.
Wow.
Well, that's what we said too. We kind of looked at each other for a second, and we just looked at him and said, "Hey, Bob, that's probably a no. Let's just go."
You said no pictures.
No pictures. Screw that. But we went outside, had a little bit more fun, listened a little bit more to history and all, and I was kind of intrigued. Went home from that weekend. That Monday, I get a picture from somebody who was with our group, who was taking pictures of us in the field. And one of the pictures was 2 ladies in period dress who were there looking at their digital camera at what they had taken. But behind them was another person. Now, we're infantry, so we had a very specific uniform. Yeah. This was a cavalry uniform. This guy had a cavalry hat. He had yellow on his sleeves, which is cavalry, and his face was skeletal with a whiskey beard that kind of went down a little bit. None of us looked like him. Yeah. Trust us, a lot of them look like me. You would know if we were in a picture. So if we looked at it, and I was like, well, that's fucking cool. And then I started, picking up books and reading and got more and more interested in that side of it. And then eventually I thought, well, you know what? I had a lot of experience as a kid that I couldn't explain. And to be honest with you, I thought I was nuts because, it ain't normal for a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old to see a tall, thin, bald guy walk past your bedroom door when no one's home.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'm gonna start a group, and we're gonna maybe we'll just have a little fun with it and do a few things. And then as I started bringing people in and talking to people, and I started thinking, well, we should do this the right way. And we decided to do it instead of doing it like what I call a hobbyist way, where we just go to pay to investigate haunted locations. We decided, let's turn the gears and we'll make it based where we're helping people. But we don't charge a dime. We'll go travel and we'll go see what we can do to help them out. And that's what we ended up doing. And that's where my group actually started.
And it's crazy, like, especially, you said that reenacting really brought it up because Gettysburg is just such a hotbed for paranormal shit. And Vince, have you ever been to Gettysburg?
No.
Well, one of the last times we went to Gettysburg, one thing that really stood out to me, and I try to go at least every year. We haven't been this year. We'll probably go next year. But there was one year we were there and there was residual cannon fire that you hear down there. And we heard that. And we were sitting there and we're like, what the fuck? Like, and I'm sitting there, I'm trying to put it together and we're all looking at each other. And, we were on a ghost walk at the time too. And I'm like, that's not a fucking train. Like, what is that? Like, what's that noise? And then finally, the lady who was giving us a tour, she's like, don't mind that. That's the residual cannon fire. And we all just kind of, we're like, what? She's like, yeah, you can hear this pretty much every night out here. And it sounds like cannons just being blasted. And, my wife or somebody was like, I wonder if they're playing these sounds. I'm like, no, I'm like, because you can kind of hear them kind of like off in a distance over in like various different spots. Like, if it was through speakers, it would all kind of have like one, like, coming from one certain, but these, that one's lower, one's higher, one sounds closer, one sounds farther away. And that just blew me away, just hearing like the residual cannon fire and all that shit up there.
I do always say, first and foremost, if you're going to go to Gettysburg, go for the history. I mean, let's not ignore the fact that thousands of men died on that field trying to, for whatever their cause was, whether they were, whatever side they, I don't judge. I did, that's history. That's nothing that I have anything to say in, but just to know, acknowledge that no matter where you go in that field, somebody perished. That was one of the things that I think started bothering me about Gettysburg more than anything, because I love Gettysburg. Gettysburg was always my home away from home. I mean, hour and a half drive from Baltimore. It was always a weekend trip when I had nothing to do. And it got to the point where I was seeing more people there trying to ghost hunt than there were actually there for the history. And I think respect the history first. I mean, if you're there to find the spirits, fine, that's fine. But remember that spirit died there, and try to show a little respect. That's my gear on it. And some of the ghost tours are fine. There was a couple there that I did, I've been on, and I thought these people are really good. It's fun stories. You never know what'll happen. There was one though, and I don't even know if it's still in business anymore, but it used to bother my soul, because they used to you'd pay the fee to do the ghost tour. Granted. Now they give you a couple of extra people can get an EMF detector. Now it wasn't a fancy one. It only made noises. Didn't have no gauges on it. It wasn't digital. It just squeaked and hollered. And they would charge extra for that. And then they would take these people out and they would start saying, well, right here, this is the most haunted spot in all of Gettysburg. For those who have your EMF detectors, lift them to the air and listen to the ghosts scream. And these people would do it. And these EMFs would start going off, and they're going crazy and everything else. And I'm like, but if you look up while you're doing it, you're right underneath the power transformer.
Yeah.
I was like, come on, man.
We did one last time we went up there, and a lot of times we went up, and when we stayed, we went to the cemetery, the National Cemetery up there, and it is unreal how many unmarked graves there are. Vince, if you ever get up there, it's for the Union side where the cemetery is up there. There are so many unmarked graves. It is unbelievable. Like, it's literally just unknown, and it's sectioned out from like where they came from. Like, it would be like Maryland, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and then all these and we were sitting there looking and we're like, fuck, there's just all these unknowns. There's people who were buried there in that cemetery that were from Pearl Harbor, because we looked at the date and we saw the date and we're like, that's Pearl Harbor. They were buried here after Pearl Harbor. So that's just insane. But we also did a ghost touring a ghost hunt while we were up there. And it was the first one I've ever done in Gettysburg. So I was kind of excited because normally we go up, do the history type stuff. And they took us to like 2 locations and they gave us all kinds of toys to play around with. And it was in the top of the one haunted museum shop. And they had like a couple of haunted dolls and they had like a haunted mirror. Like they had a blanket over it. They're like, we're not taking the blanket off of it because apparently like, it's a possessed, mirror or whatever. And they gave us like all kinds of cool toys, EMF detectors, all kinds of stuff. But they also gave us the box that talked, whatever that talking box is, which was cool. Yeah. And like you would ask questions and you could hear it kind of in a white noise type, answer back or whatever and all that. And that was cool because we actually got like a couple of hits and answers. Like there was a lady who was killed in her house, and that was the lady we were trying to get, to tell us what happened to her or whatever and all that. So, a lot of that shit, that's the first time I've ever got to use equipment like that. And I was like, oh man, this is so goddamn cool. So.
Now, being around ghosts is something that I've done forever, and that with my fiance, Carissa Fleck, is a psychic medium. I think she draws them. I don't think that they're like we've moved into places that's actually an activity. I think her ass just brings them in and they just stay.
Yeah.
we literally, since we've moved from Baltimore, now my house in Baltimore was legitimately haunted. It always had been. But we moved up here and it was a nice, quiet house. We first moved up into Pennsylvania. Nice, quiet house. 3 months later, we're hearing walking across the steps and everything else. And then after that, we moved to another house up here in New York. Same thing. Now the house we're in now, same thing. There's stuff here, and I'm thinking just because she reaches out. I mean, her thing is that she does clients every day, from all different walks of life, different parts of the world, and she'll do 8 to 10 readings a day, and that's her communicating to 8 to 10 dead people. And I think some of them just say, "Hey, you're cool. Let's hang out." And so this is my life. This is where we end up.
And of course. Here in Maryland, of course, you've been a lot of places. Is there any place here in Maryland that stands out where you had the biggest paranormal experience that stands out to you?
Well, there's two. There's two. One of them I actually went to as a child and had experiences there, and then afterwards, in between seasons 1 and season 2 of the show, I actually worked there. It was with Westminster Hall, right down in Baltimore, right. Right near the University Hospital where Allen Poseberry. Some people know, not a lot of people do, but like the church was built after the cemetery was there, so they do have catacombs, meaning the church was built right on top of the cemetery. So when you go in there, there are crypts, there are headstones, there are still pathways that go through there, but it's all like a dirt basement now. And that place has some pretty cool activity. I would do stuff. I would do like hall setups because they would do events there. And like these guys, professional guys, are bringing all these chairs for me to set up, and they'd be up against the walls and all that stuff, and they're stacked in a way where they shouldn't fall over. And I'd be down the other side doing something, and you hear boom, and a whole row would be knocked over, and I'm like, come on, man, I got to work. Okay. And the second one is a house that my team actually investigated in Upper Marlboro.
Okay.
In PG County. And that house was built by the homeowners. They right from everywhere. No one else has lived in that house. This land was nothing but open forest when they bought the place and built it up. And they called me one day and we're looking for an investigation. We went through the whole process. My team went to interview and everything else because we got to kind of weed out, because there's some people who need help and there's other people who really need help. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Not all of them we can't reach. So we said, okay, we'll come out there. We talked to them and everything else. We ended up investigating there. And generally, on a good night on an investigation, if you get 3-4 EVPs, you think, wow, we just hit a mother load of a haunting, right? The first night we were there, we got 35.
Holy shit.
And we had the obvious noises, we had conversations, we had child's voices. It was like saying, don't go in there. We had another voice that was actually saying the name of one of my team members in a room on the floor that nobody was at. And I was at a point where I was like scratching my head saying, this is impossible. Is it cool if we come back another weekend and try again? Because there has to be some reasonable explanation for why we got that much. Yeah, come on out. That's fine. Yeah. And these people are extremely nice. I'm still in contact with them today. The second time we went out there, they just said, look, we're going to a hotel. The key's under the mat. Do your thing. Give us a call in the morning and tell us what happened. went in, investigated again, the whole thing, set up the camera, set up the recorders, did it all, left there, started evidence review, 50 EVPs. So that had to be off the chain evidence in that spot. And then if you did the history, and this is going to go right back to Maryland history, War of 1812. You know that the British marched into D.C. and they burnt the White House and the Capitol building and all that. This was their landing spot. Was 2 miles from this spot.
Oh shit!
And apparently there was a little town there where they were docking the boats. That they basically just chased everybody off with rifle fire, and people died in the woods.
Wow. That's absolutely insane. And it's crazy with a lot. Like, I feel like a lot of those like war type hauntings are some of the more severe, like war and like Indian burial ground type hauntings. Like those are some of the more aggressive, hauntings that are out there. And it's funny that you brought up Upper Marlboro, because there's a place that my mom, one of her boyfriends, he lived down off of, I don't know how familiar you are with that area, but he lived off of a road called Claggett Landing Road. Okay. And it's right there near Trade Zone Avenue, down off of like Route 3 and all that. And he had the guy that he lived with, there was a little house they lived in. It was down on a farm, and we would see all kinds of weird shit. It always felt eerie there, and we would always see like shadow figures out in the cornfields. Apparently there was a firefighter that had drowned in a pond that was down in the woods trying to save a little girl, out of the river, or the pond that was down there. And there was a house that was along Claggett Landing Road that was abandoned. It looked like it had like bullet holes in the wall, like it looked like there was blood, and it looked like it was abandoned for years. There was all kinds of just weird shit that happened there. And I remember somebody went into that house. They got a bunch of people together and went into the house, and they did a seance in that abandoned house that was on Claggett Landing Road. And then like chairs started falling over, like windows started to open and close and all that shit, and they ran out of there and never went back. And I don't know if it's still there, because it's been a long time since I've been there, but that place was just, it was spooky as hell from top to bottom. Like whenever I went there, I would spend like the summer with my mom, and I was always just kind of like, man, this place is fucking spooky. And have you ever there's a legend, are you familiar with Annapolis any at all?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the urban legend of the witch that was in Annapolis?
Refresh me. It sounds familiar.
So right down in Annapolis, there's a park called Truxton Park. And you go down, Truxton Park is there. And when I was a kid, I used to live on the other end of those woods, and I would play baseball at those parks. And there was always this urban legend from all the other kids of, hey, there's a witch's grave. And when you go to Truxton Park, there's the 2 baseball fields, and right at the end of one of the fields, there's the woods line right there. And if you go up the hill, you see this big giant fucking oak tree, like gigantic oak tree, and there's a huge hole, like a house size hole underneath the tree, and there's a fence laying down and all that stuff. And apparently there's a legend, and it's changed over time. And I've looked stuff up on it. I did a book report on it when I was in high school. That apparently that like there was a woman that lived there that was accused of witchcraft, and they pulled her out, they buried her alive right there, where that tree was, and the ground exploded. She came out, killed all the witnesses, vanished into those woods, and was never seen or heard from again. And you would always hear weird stuff in the woods. Like we would always have to walk through the woods, me and my mom, like walking back from baseball games. You would always see like weird stuff, or you would see these weird lights that kind of be off in the woods, and it had an uneasy feeling. And like the legend evolved numerous times, like over, like someone said that there were 3 witches, there was 1 witch, like it just kind of went back and forth. And I always just kind of tracked down the aura of that, of where that came from, or if it was someone that just lived there and it's just a hole of where their house once sat or something like that. So, it's just insane, like how urban legends of that kind of stuff. Like, of course, in Maryland, we have the Goat Man. I was telling a little bit about Vincent about the legend of the Goat Man. Like, how that stuff takes, it just starts rolling downhill, and then it gets bigger, and bigger. And, it's crazy. Have you ever experienced anything like that? Like, like going to like a witch's grave or like anything like that?
Oh, no, because I've done the witch's grave or anything else, but we have done, like with the show I did. There's a legend that in the church next to the house that we investigated during the first season, that there's supposedly the grave of an elephant buried there. So, and it was told to us several times, and it was something along the lines of, circus was in town, the elephant died, what are you going to do? They buried it. And they buried it in the churchyard. So we just don't know which side it was supposed to be. If you ask one person, it's over in this corner. If you ask another person, it's right in here. So, I mean, that's an unusual grave. I mean, I wouldn't say it's anything like, witches exploding graves or anything else, but it was, it's still a weird story.
Yeah. And now with that, did you get like any kind of like elephant EVPs or anything like that? Or like elephant, what is it? You use the thermo. Did you like see like an elephant on like the thermo camera or something?
We never found the ghost of an elephant, unfortunately. If they did, that would probably take on a whole new episode. Now we become like Ghosts of Animal Planet or some shit like that.
And of course, and of course, you're referring to Ghosts of Sheperdstown, which was on Travel Channel. It's now on Discovery Plus, Destination America, wherever it would air. How did Ghosts of Sheperdstown come into the picture? How did you get involved with all that? How did the show come together?
I'll be honest with you. It started with me getting an email from the production company. They had been, I guess, scouting that area for a little while. The actual idea of the show was brought up by the original police chief of Sheperdstown, who resigned right after everything started getting rolling. But he was also a part-time ghost hunter. I don't know if he did it I didn't get to meet him, so I don't know if he did it for fun or he was actually doing it for something else. But he started first noticing that there was getting a lot of interesting calls from Sheperdstown, within his own town, for activity and all that stuff. And somehow or another, it got its way to the production company who ended up doing the show. And then they just sent out a broad email to local teams like, we're possibly going to be doing a show here. We don't want to go too much into detail with it because we're still trying to work it out to see how we can do this. But, would you be interested? And half the time I answer these emails, half the time I don't. I get weird ones like, have you ever investigated a haunted hospital? And it's like a production company in England. I'm like, probably not going to work out for you. So I just thought, okay, I'll answer it. Why not? And I started talking to the producers, and they asked about my team and how long we've been doing it. And they got interested in what my particular skill set was, which, as far as I knew, was being a fat guy looking at a camera. But okay, we can talk about that. So they asked me to come out to Sheperdstown. They had a small film crew there. They had brought in Elizabeth Saint, who ended up being on the show as well. And they wanted the idea of the show was not quite what it ended up becoming, because they originally they were going to cast another gentleman who was going to be like the third part of the team, but he wasn't going to be an investigator. He was just going to be someone who was like a liaison between us and the police department.
Yeah.
And so we went out and we filmed in this house in Sheperdstown just so they could see how we all interacted and how we got along and everything else. And then there was a third guy they brought in who they were also considering who filmed, and then afterwards just said he didn't want any parts of it and then completely disappeared. We don't know what happened to him.
Oh. I guess maybe the ghost might have taken him.
No, I'm just thinking, since I got the part, I really hope no one looks too far in the woods, but that's a different story. So they came back and they were like, yeah, we want to go ahead and do this, but we're changing things. We're going to bring a third investigator in, and we're going to, and we're going to have you work directly with the police, which I thought sounded like the most logical thing to do anyway. And back and forth, how it is working with networks. They go a couple of months where it's like, we're doing this, don't know when we're doing it. Then all of a sudden you get a date, you need to be in Sheperdstown on this day to do a cast meeting. And then that very next week, we're going to start shooting. So it was kind of like a hurry up rush, and now we're filming type of thing.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't up until about a week before we started filming that we found out that Nick Roth was joining the show. And I almost backed out, to be honest with you, because everyone knows Nick Roth from Ghost Adventures.
Yeah.
And so my whole thought was that, okay, well, now it's going to be a show that we thought was going to have maybe a little more substance is now going to become the Nick Roth show. And I thought he was going to come in with some sort of ego, I am the great, powerful Nick Roth, look at what I can do. But he came out like 2 days before shooting, and they were like, yeah, there's Nick. And I talked to Nick a few times, never worked with him. And he's like, hey, Bill, how you doing? And I said, Nick, can we go out and talk? And we went in the back of the what we call the Beast, which was the ambulance of the show.
Yeah.
And we sat in the back and we talked for about an hour. And I told him my thoughts and everything else. And he's like, look, I'm not here to do anything more than investigate with you guys. He said, what I've done in the past doesn't matter. He said, I'm going to come full team Shep here. We're going to, you, me, and Elizabeth, we're going to form a team and we're going to do what we need to do to get this done. And he ended up being a really cool guy. And it's kind of, we went on from there.
Nice. I mean, I was a huge fan of the show. It came out because I look at it more like Sheperdstown is more of like a little bit local. And it seems like some of it throughout the show, I believe in the season 2, some of it actually kind of went a little bit into Maryland. Like I think it was like St. Mary's County or like somewhere around there where it kind of crossed that line a little bit into Maryland.
Second episode, we went to a house in just outside of out Antietam, in the Antietam battlefield. That's where her first house was. And we actually did in season 1 go to Antietam as well. And there was one really nice thing that was filmed with just me and Elizabeth down actually at the Burnside Bridge, but they cut it, which was a shame because I felt that I wanted to show a little bit more that I wasn't just a ghost hunter, that I had a little more chops to me. And I was giving a little bit of history of the battle, and I actually had actual mini balls from the battle in my hand that I was showing on camera, talking about and stuff like that. And then it got omitted, and I felt bad about that because I felt, I don't want people to just think that I'm like, because I'm not a TV guy. I'm never going to be a TV guy. I've never been a TV guy. And like I wanted to actually show that there was more to my background than just hunting ghosts. And now I'm doing it on TV. So,
And that I mean, hey, and it went 2 seasons, correct? Was it 2 seasons or did it go farther than just the 2?
2 seasons, and they did the actual first show season was only supposed to be 6 episodes and done. There wasn't supposed to be a second season. There wasn't supposed to be anything else from it. We went out, we did our job. When it was done, it was supposed to be over with. But here's where it comes in. That it became the top rated show in history.
Wow.
And so, of course, they would talk and joke every once in a while because even while filming, they didn't even have a name for the show. They were calling it Ghost Shepherds at one point, and some weird, funky shit like that. And then they finally came up with the name like towards the very end of filming. But they were like, yeah, well, we'll do season 2. We'll have the name. We'll have this. We'll have that. And we'll just call it Ghost of, and then we'll go to Sheperdstown in this one. And season 2, we'll go to another town. And, like, okay, it was only supposed to be 6 episodes. I'm going back to work after this. So, but then they did an episode that only aired on TLC, which was Return to Sheperdstown, which was highlight reel of the show. And I guess it was just as I say, hey, we're going to come back with the second one because it kind of left with a cliffhanger, and then season 2.
Oh, wow. And what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to go ahead and get into our featured beer tonight, which our featured beer is Angry Orchard Hard Cider. So something pretty simple. So shout out to Angry Orchard Hard Cider. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into our featured shot, which we debuted last week. Unfortunately, we were doing gin there for a while. And then our good friend of the show, Sherry Nelson, she sent us out. We mentioned that we had never tried the Metallica blackened whiskey. So she sent it out to us. So shout out to Sherry Nelson. She sent this out. And I don't know if you guys have tried this, but definitely go out if you like whiskey. Definitely try it. But if you ever heard the Metallica song, fuel, and it says, give me fuel, give me fire, you literally get fuel and fire all in one when you try this. Cause it's
don't forget whiskey in a barrel.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's, yeah. So here we go. So we're going to go ahead and pour this. So shout out to Metallica. Make sure you pick up their album that just dropped, and shout out to Blackened Whiskey. And you guys are going to watch me die taking this.
Yeah, I have to go and buy that one time. Metallica does our intro in college. I got to go and get that by that one time for the Hokies, man. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And what we're going to do now is we're going to get into our game segment. So Vince, this is a little bit since you were a guest on the show. Now you're helping us guest co-host. So Bill, we play a series of games on the show. I don't know if you've watched any of our content or listened to any of the old episodes, but what we do is we start off with 5-second rule. Have you ever played 5-second rule?
No. I watched a couple of your shows because my friend, you first sent me the invite to be on here. The first thing I thought was, well, let me go ahead and watch some shows and make sure it isn't just some guy in a basement. But then I figured out what the hell.
And So what we're going to do is we're going to start off 5-second rule. Pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, basically, I'm going to say name 3 things of a certain category, and you have 5 seconds to name those. If you can't get them, it goes to Vince. If Vince doesn't get them, it comes to me. None of us get them. It's just a dead round. So that we always start off easy, and then it gets harder as we go along. So, Bill, what I want you to do is I want you to name 3 shows that people currently binge watch starting now.
Friends, you, and Squid Game.
Oh, all right. Time ran out. So you got Friends and you. So Vincent, and now it goes over to you. Name 3 shows that people binge watch starting now.
The Game and Dexter.
Well, what was the last one?
I think they dropped a new season of Dexter.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Sure it's either dropped it or it's on the way.
And then round 2, and this one's a little bit easier. And it's going to start with you, Bill. Name 3 items that you put into a bowl.
Cereal, soup, and stew.
All right, cool. And if anything, that would have been easy for Vince because, of course, Vince owns a cannabis company, so he would have said something right off the jump. So that's
well, see, that's different mindset. So he's got the cannabis, I got the fat man rule. It's always what can go in a bowl that I can eat. So that's where we're at.
It goes hand in hand.
The next
to have the cannabis, you got to have the cereal.
You know what I'm saying? I got some pops sitting around top of the refrigerator right now.
Yeah, you do. But see, the cereal, it sets up for it that if you're eating Captain Crunch, you're torturing your mouth because you're ripping the flesh off the top of your gums.
I've heard people say that. It's never happened to me.
Yeah, like I feel like they designed it to do that. Like I saw a meme.
You gotta be a little bit of a masochist to enjoy Captain Crunch.
Yeah. And what we do now is we move on to a game called Incoherent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold up some cards, and they're going to be in drunken lingo. And what you need to do is sound them out to yourself the best you can and try to figure out what those cards say. And if you need a hint, let me know because there's 2 hints on the back of the card. And your first card, can you see that okay?
What it is.
I got part of it. I don't get the first part of it. I got the rest of it.
One of the hints is anxiety. It helps with anxiety.
Well, I know that part of it. Still working on the top part.
The second is how to get your weed covered by insurance.
Oh, medical marijuana.
Yes, it is marijuana.
It's legal in New York. I don't need that.
No, you don't. You don't.
And then here's your next card.
Okay, I'm going, what the fuck on all this one?
One of your hints is Nelly.
It's getting hot in here?
Yes.
That's why.
The second hint was a failed attempt at being smooth.
Yo.
And then here's the final card right here. What do you think that says, Bill?
God. Okay, give me a hint.
All right. Hint is offensive. The other hint,
everything that I shot off that wasn't shown on TV. So
the other hint is a politically correct way of saying no fucks given.
I lost on this one.
It is politically incorrect.
Politically correct.
It is politically incorrect. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move on to have you. There's a game that we play called What Do You Mean? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold up this card right here. And the first round, I'm going to give you options of what you think best answers that card. And then I'm going to have you create a meme your own for it after that. So you see the old gentleman standing there wearing a sweater with his thumb up. And your options of what could meme this card are card number 1. When you're watching Chopped and the chef decides to make a vinaigrette with less than half a minute. That face you make when you change your Facebook status from in a relationship to single, which is card 2. When the waiter stops shredding Parmesan cheese, but you haven't said when yet, which is card number 3. And when all 4 of your boyfriends are at the same bar for card number 4.
He's got 4 boyfriends. That man's rocking.
Yo.
Is there an option 5? It's cold, but God, these Depends are keeping me warm.
That's a great. We're gonna take that. We're gonna take that in the game of what do you mean was called freestyle. So you just freestyled the card. So that's gonna be that card. Awesome. That's great. And then we end it with Cards Against Humanity. And of course, Vince has played this before on the game. We play it a little bit differently. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read off the face card. And then you're going to randomly choose a card. I'm just going to read off the face card. I'm going to say, choose a number between 1 and 4. Whatever number you choose is going to answer that card, but you get 1 rebuttal. So if you don't like the answer to the card, you can choose another one, and then that'll answer that card. So pretty much the first card is, my country 'tis a thee, sweet land of blank. And then you have your option between 1, 2, 3, or 4. To randomly answer that card.
3.
All right. So 3 is my country 'tis a thee, sweet land of the 8 gay warlocks who dictate the rules of fashion.
Sounds about right to me.
All right. Are you satisfied with that, or do you?
You're satisfied? You go with it? I'm good with it.
All right. Cool. And then we're going to do another one, which. This card is, here's the church, here's the steeple, open the doors, and there is blank. And then you have your choice between 1 through 4.
Let's go 2.
2. All right. Here's the church, here's the steeple, open the door, and there is exploding pigeons.
Damn.
I like it.
Jesus.
I want to see what 4 has going on.
You want to see what 4 has going on? All right, let's see what 4 is. All right. Here's the church. Here's the steeple. Open the doors, and there is ejaculating live bees, but the bees are angry.
See, there you go. You go to 4.
And Bill, thank you for taking part of our Ode to Humanity segment. And of course, you know, with the ghost hunting stuff. Now, we asked in Maryland what your biggest ghost hunting experience was. What do you think the biggest episode for Ghost of Sheperdstown was? Like, what do you think was the episode that was kind of like the turning point for the show? You know, that kind of roped in the viewers when you guys were filming.
Yeah, it's really hard to say because unlike a lot of the ghost shows, our series was continuous. You had to watch each episode to stay in line with the story. But I think for me, my own personal favorite was the 3rd episode of season 1 because they had originally, when we originally filmed the first 2 episodes, we hadn't really jived yet. And I think it showed a lot that we were still kind of learning each other's abilities and what we can do and what, because I come from working with a team. Nick came from working with a TV show. Elizabeth came from a team, but she hadn't been in the field as long as I had been. So
yeah, each
of us came from a different side of it. I think by episode 3, we started meshing. We started being more like we knew what each other was going to be able to do and this, that, and the other. And for me also, I think that I started feeling a little more comfortable because, again, before that, I was on 1 episode of Psychic Kids with Chip Coffey years ago.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a lot of TV, time on. So I think I started getting more used to knowing that, okay, I got a sound pack here. I got a guy in a closet over here who's doing the sound. I've got camera guy here, camera guy here. I need to walk this way without looking at either of the camera guys.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that, and I played it I was so serious in the first 2 episodes that I think by 3 I started to let loose a little bit. And by the end of season 1, the network itself started adapting some of the stuff that I say is calling Billisms, or as I like calling me being a smartass.
Yeah.
But they actually got a note from the network that said Bill was so comical when he did the original test shoots, and now he's really serious. Can you see what he can do to try to loosen up and be a little more myself? And I'm like, so you want me to be me, is what you're saying? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, you asked for it. And like,
and you just show up with no pants on. And it's like, well, you asked for me.
I do that a lot.
Say
That's
it
why
to
they
me,
shoot
right?
in the way stuff. You know, I like to keep my dangles hanging out free, but that's a different story too. But we were doing the third episode. One of the first things we did was we interviewed the people in the house. And me, I'm listening, but at the same time, I'm observing. And like, they're saying that they can't keep their window shades shut because it keeps opening them up. And I'm looking around, and there's a really nice, elaborate backgammon table, which I'm pretty sure they didn't play, but it was there because it looked pretty. And at one point, I closed off our interview by saying, "We'll get to the bottom of this. We'll figure out what's going on. We'll help you guys out, and you can get back to playing naked backgammon." And like the whole room just stopped. It just stopped. And then I looked at the camera and said, "You wanted this."
This is what you asked for.
Yeah.
You asked for. And then it got completely cut out of the show. But the more it went on, they kept saying, "Ask Bill to liven this up and put a Billism in, put a Billism here, put a Billism there." So by season 2, and they came to me and said, "We need you to do a side piece." I'm like, "Billism? Yeah, okay, Billism, okay."
And have you ever had anything with any ghost or paranormal experience where you had anything kind of like be a little bit violent or kind of cuss at you all the time? Like what kind of experiences have you had with that?
Well, I mean, you get that every once in a while on like EVPs or something. You'll hear "fuck you" or "get out" or something like that. I think over the years I've had a couple of situations like Gettysburg's a good example. When I was first starting up my team, we were up there just playing around. We were on Stax Bridge. Now, don't buy into the ghost history of Stax Bridge. It's not real. But the location itself was a field hospital after the battle. So there's a lot of dead people there. So it's that the activities there, just the stories they talk about the bridge is bullshit. But we were on the bridge and just playing around, like just experimenting with some stuff. And I had a voice recorder rolling, and we're walking across the bridge and doing a couple things here and there. And at one point, I literally felt like a hand on my back shove me forward.
Oh shit!
I took like 3-4 steps, was trying to catch my my balance before I fell over. And the guys are with me. I'm like, "What the fuck just happened? Did you trip?" I'm like, "No, someone just fucking shoved." And went back and listened to the recording where we're walking. You can hear me walking, and I'm in tennis shoes, so it's not so bang bang on the floorboards of that bridge because it's a wooden bridge. But you could hear the sounds of like hard boots with metal rings on them, like you would have on actual you soldiers' shoes. And you heard a voice in more of a German dialect that said, "Get out." And then you heard me go, "What the fuck?" Because I got shoved. So I think the only other time, I mean, outside of what was arguably the worst experience I've ever had on the 5th episode of our show, we were in a house in Crofton. And it was a friend of my tech guy on our team who was moving out, and they had actually had a ceiling fan get ripped off the ceiling where it was like,
holy
the
shit,
fan was on the floor and the wiring, it went all the way across the ceiling to where it was laying.
Jesus.
It's just like, and we were investigating, and this was a really weird house. It was the first floor, a second floor basement, and then there was a sub basement to this thing. And we weren't. It wasn't an official capacity. We just went out there to just to back up some stuff because she's like like a lot of people, they think you're crazy because this stuff's happening. They don't know if it's coincidence or what's happening with them. So we went out there to investigate, and we were there, and all of us on all floors, basement, sub basement, upstairs where I was at, heard a growl. It sounded like a really angry dog. Just happened once, but we were all like on the radio. "Did you hear a dog? Did you hear a dog?" It was all over. And the next morning I woke up, and on my left calf, I had what looked like puncture wounds, like I had gotten bit by something. Didn't feel it that night. Wasn't there when I went home, but I woke up that morning and it was there.
That's crazy. Wow. It's amazing how a lot of that shit works, like especially with like, poltergeists and all that, how they can manipulate stuff. And then, you're somewhere and you walk into a random cold spot and then your hair just literally stands on the back of your neck. It's crazy. And Bill, would you be able to hang out for another half an hour, or do you need to get ready to roll out?
I need to roll out a little after 9. I can kick it up till 9, maybe a few minutes after, but
Okay. All right,
I got
cool.
things to do with the missus. So
No
I
problem.
got work tomorrow because unlike people who actually have TV shows that are still going, I got to go to work in the morning.
And when you were doing the Civil War reenacting stuff, do you ever sit there and feel like that the spirits there in Gettysburg ever sat there and watched what you guys were doing and just
I
judged?
probably said,
And
what
just,
a bunch of fucking idiots.
Yeah, and just
we always said that because we're sitting there sweating our dicks off in wool when we could be wearing nice, airy clothes. We're walking around in these ungodly shoes that are leather heeled with metal horseshoes on the back. That any 5 steps, anything that's a little bit slick, you're going to find your ass on the ground. And they're like, you got tennis shoes, but you're wearing these. You guys are fucking idiots.
And of course, Bill, we know you need to get ready to go soon. For anybody interested in finding any of your stuff online, where all can they find you and find a lot of your stuff?
Well, I mean, obviously RedTube, but that may not be the same thing you're looking for. But if they want to see my dangle spin, I guess that's fine. But
premium content.
Right now, a Civil War ghost is typing on a computer right now, like, hey, let me see if he does, because when we did this in the Civil War, this isn't the way we did it.
No, look, I've been in the middle of writing a book about my experiences and getting up to the TV show and writing behind the scenes shit and stuff like that. But there's a whole other book that I said I wanted to write years ago, and it's about being a reenactor and the dumbass people that come up and ask you the stupidest questions. Like I literally, this is, again, I told you about the uniform thing. Is that a real uniform? Is that a, yeah, okay. I actually been in Gettysburg at the North Carolina Monument because my unit was North Carolina. So if we had free time, we would go up there in uniform and stand there just to talk to people, talk about the history, take pictures, stuff like that. And we actually had more than one occasion come up and people ask, what happened here? And I would go, well, just over that tree line was the Battle of Endor. And if you go that way, if you imagine it in wintertime, that was Hoth, Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon's buried in the middle of the field, his grave's over there, go look for it, that sort of thing. I've had people that have come in and say, are you using a real fire?
I mean, do you want to put your hand in it? Yeah.
Put it in and find out, No, it's a hologram. We're way advanced in 1862.
Yeah.
Are you going to actually eat the food you're cooking? Look at me. Does it look like I'm going to miss a meal? You actually sleep in the tent. All that shit.
Yeah. Have you ever had anybody ask, so how was it when you were in the war?
I probably could answer that. I'm turning 50 on Monday, and I feel like I've actually experienced that shit. So.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, I could see some idiotic person not knowing the history of it, just going up and going, man, how was it when you were in battle? And you're just kind of like, you do realize that this war was like 200 years ago, right? Like, I don't.
Yeah, the fun thing was that, like I said, going out in uniform, you could literally fuck with people who are out there who are doing the ghost stuff. So if you go out there just as it's starting to get dark and you go stand in the woods and don't move,
yeah,
people get bugged out because they look and they catch a glimpse of like your uniform. They're like, there's a fucking ghost. I was on top of Little Round Top once, and it was getting dark. It was one of the things we used to do is get a cigar and we'd go up and sit up and watch the sunset because it's a beautiful view up there. And we sat there. It wasn't quite dark yet, but it was getting close to it. And there was this family coming up, and it was this little kid, and she's like walking up, and she sees me, and I'm just frozen. I'm like a tin man, just standing there, just to mess with him. And she comes up a little closer. She's looking at him, looking at me. She's looking a little apprehensive. She's a little closer, and she reaches her hand out and touches my belly and goes, "Oh, he's real," and ran off.
Now, get in her voice.
Just imagine that she does that, but her hand actually goes through you at that point. It's like, at that point, like, do you stand there and keep your hand in the spirit, or do you run? Because I think if you were real, I wouldn't run away and be like, oh, he's real. I would run if my hand went fucking through it. Like, that's when I am running like that. So, but anyways, Bill, we know you got to wrap up. So we're going to go ahead and let you get out of here. Thank you for coming on to the Happy Hour podcast. We would love to have you back in the future, especially maybe even if it's next October, around Halloween time, or just, anytime you get some free time, we would love to speak with you. Before we wrap up, would you real quick for our audio version be able to just say, this is Bill Hartley from Ghost of Sheperdstown, and you're listening to the Happy Hour podcast?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
This is Bill Hartley from Ghost of Sheperdstown, and you are listening to the Happy Hour podcast. And I'm doing it with no pants on.
We appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and let you roll. For those of you watching us on our YouTube live, we're going to go ahead and keep on rolling for about a half an hour or so. Me and Vince are going to keep on, chit-chatting it up. We're going to let Bill go ahead and get out of here. And for those of you listening to us on the audio forms on iHeart, Apple, wherever else you find your podcast, make sure you tune in next week. Actually, in 2 days, we'll be live again on YouTube Live with Soho Johnny. That episode will also be airing relatively soon too. So make sure you check that out wherever you find your podcasts. And we're going to go ahead and let Bill get out of here. Bill, thank you. Make sure you keep
My pleasure.
Well,
absolutely. It's been a real pleasure. It's great meeting both of you guys. I'm pretty much free anytime, so just call me.
Okay.
And for you, my friend, we're going to talk about what's on your fridge. Hit me up, okay?
And Bill, shoot me your address. We'll shoot you like a shirt or something.
Okay. It's better than the thong that I usually wear. That would probably be nice.
All right, cool. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a good night, guys.
You too. All right. So Vince, that was Bill. Bill, pretty cool guy. A lot of that stuff with Gettysburg, like that blows my mind away. Like that they sat there and wore all of, that wool stuff. Imagine that. Like you're sitting there, you're wearing like wool fucking uniforms the whole time, but you're not only wearing wool uniforms, you're wearing wool uniforms with like clothes underneath. So pretty much you're sitting there wearing your hoodie, and you have to put on a wool uniform. Imagine how hot that would be. Like,
I mean, if you're fighting in the wintertime, though, I'm pretty sure it's probably pretty clutch. Now, if we're talking March, April through August,
middle of summer, like imagine like 100-degree day. And I'm sure a lot of those reenactments are probably during the summer because kids don't have school, kids are out. A lot of people are in Gettysburg. Just imagine that. Like, that's absolutely fucking insane. Like, I just
yelling, prepare for war. And I just look at him like, no, no.
So pretty much if Bubba ever reaches out to you and goes, look, Vince, we're going to do a charity flag football game in Gettysburg. But what we're going to do is we're going to wear, wool uniforms. One side's going to be the Union, the other side's going to be the Confederates, and it's going to be a charity. But we're going to wear these wool uniforms. It's going to be like, look, Bubba, I love you, buddy, but no, I'm not wearing a wool uniform.
Set up, I don't think it's going to be able to withstand that. I don't think it's going to work.
And it's actually funny. Speaking about Bubba is, I told him, he should do like other stuff. Like, I told him, I was like, if he ever does a softball game, shit, I'd be down to play softball. Like, I played baseball as a kid. I was pretty decent. I probably should have pursued that over pro wrestling. I'll never, ever take away whatever I accomplished in pro wrestling because I love all of it. But part of me also sits there and goes, what would I have done in baseball if I would have pursued that? So, it's.
These are endless, and they give them like fully guaranteed contracts too.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's like their contracts, they don't cap baseball contracts. Like you sit there and you make $4 billion on top of another $4 billion. And they're just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. And then they get hurt like 3 months afterwards. And it's just kind of like, oh, this is guaranteed money, whatever. Here you go. So,
you can still have this, sir.
Yeah. But anyways, I think what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and wrap up the YouTube live. We had a little bit of the pre-show stuff. So Vince, I'm going to go ahead and let you get out of here. We're going to go ahead and wrap right here on YouTube live. As I said, the next time we will be live on YouTube will be Sunday. We'll be live Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time. Our special guest is Soho Johnny. He's a producer. He does all kinds of promoting type stuff. So it'll be interesting to talk to him. And then, of course, next weekend, we will be back again on YouTube Live on Saturday and Sunday. So we will not have an episode the week of Halloween because I will be in Salem, Massachusetts with my beautiful wife and her cousin for Halloween. So next week we will have Sadie Katz, who's starring Wrong Turn 6 and a bunch of other minor horror films. And we're also going to have Jimmy Starr. Jimmy Starr is a promoter himself, but also he's had roles in over 150 movies, small roles, including all the John Wick movies, multiple Marvel movies. So it should be fun talking to him about the various roles he's done. So once again, thank you for joining us on Happy Hour Podcast exclusively here on YouTube Live. And Vince, thank you for hanging out. I appreciate it, man. It's always good to catch up. And anytime you want to come on and hang out, just let us know. So everybody, we will see you guys next time.
Y'all take it easy. Appreciate you, Ray.
Thanks, man. All right, Vince. Thanks, buddy.